Hello and good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Heath Einstein, and I'm Dean of Admission at Texas Christian University, and we are excited to be with you for the June Facebook Live session, Building Your Resume. We're going to give it just another 30 seconds or so. We know that people are logging in now. And actually, it's really fun to go through and see where everybody is joining us from. So please add your name and your location. I see Isabella from Las Vegas. Great to have you with us. Hi, Patricia from Maple Grove, Minnesota. We've got folks here from the North Texas region and Frisco and Plano. We've got people from Houston, and I see Stacy from Denver is with us. Congratulations on the Nuggets double overtime victory last night. That was really cool. I saw Litali Perez from RGV, and for those who are not from Texas, that's the Rio Grande Valley. So all over Texas, all over the country, and hopefully we'll have folks joining us from even outside the U.S., as we usually do when we host these sessions. So welcome. It is great to be with you. We do this Facebook Live session on the first Wednesday of every month. This is the fourth in our series. The first session we did in May was on campus visits and standardized tests. In April, we did a session on scholarships and financial aid. Last month, we did course selection, both for high school students and for current college students who may be thinking about transferring to TCU or transferring somewhere else. And this month, we are doing a session on building your resume. We have a special guest with us this evening, Mike Caldwell, who's Executive Director of the Center for Career and Professional Development at TCU. That's a very fancy way of saying the Career Center. And Mike will have some comments in a few minutes. Before we begin, we start all of our programs, whether they are virtual or on campus, with a land acknowledgement. And so we'll do that right now. We are grateful for those folks who have been on this land since time immemorial, the Native communities. We are particularly grateful to the Wichita and affiliated tribes on whose ancestral land TCU sits. And the next time you're on campus, please do visit the monument that was erected a couple of years ago to the Wichita and affiliated tribes, right in between Jarvis Hall and Reed Hall, centrally located on our campus. So we started sort of flirting with these Facebook Live sessions a couple of years ago. We would do one or two, and they seem to be really successful. People enjoyed hearing from us, especially, I think, in a more relaxed format like this. And so a few months ago, we said, hey, why don't we make this a regular thing? There are probably topics that students and parents are really interested in knowing about. And so we can center each month on a different topic. And so that's what we have done. By the way, a little teaser: next month, July, we will be doing a session on writing your college essay. And that seems like an appropriate time to do that because a lot of students will be preparing for the application that will open shortly thereafter. And so summer is a great time to be working on your college essay. So we will be doing that then. Tonight's focus is on your resume, how to build it. What are some of the things you should be thinking about as you're putting together some experiences, whether you are currently in high school or currently in college, and not only what does that look like on the application itself and how will we review it, but then what's going to put you in a great position in terms of pre-professional experiences once it comes time to getting a job after college. And that's a big part of what college is about. Again, if you've been with us before, you know that this is an unscripted event. So both Mike and I have got some, ideas of what we're going to say, but mostly we're going to be riffing, and we'll be especially important answering your questions. So we've got a few minutes of thoughts, and then we'll take your questions. So please go ahead and throw those questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many as possible. The focus of tonight, again, is on building the resume. If we end up veering into other territories, that's okay too. So ask any questions that are of interest to you. I want to begin by thanking a few folks who are sitting here behind the scenes. You don't see them, but Rob Berline from Alumni Relations, Amy Peterson from Marketing and Communication, and Liz Rainwater from the Office of Admission are all here making sure that that we look pretty and sound okay. Okay, so I want to start by talking a little bit about the resume and how students can effectively choose to spend their time during their pre-TCU years. High school, if you're a high school student, is a really wonderful time of exploration. You are not expected at age 14, 15, 16, 17 to know exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life. And really, especially early in your high school years, you should be using that time to explore. Anything that is even of the slightest interest to you, you should attempt, whether that is joining an athletic team or being part of a political organization or doing volunteer work, even perhaps beyond what your school might require of you. Anything that sort of speaks to you in an interesting way is something that you should try. I think often what happens is we become fixated on the idea that there is a certain number or a certain kind of activity that will sort of grant you access to colleges that are pretty hard to get into. And the reality is that's not the case. There isn't, this magic elixir, a combination of activities that will grant you entry or gain you admission on their own. What's more important to us is that you've chosen activities that are meaningful to you. Again, early on in your high school career, you might not exactly know what that means, and that's okay. And similarly, when you get to college and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're choosing internships, sometimes the best internships are the ones that tell you what you don't want to do. So being able to explore sort of with impunity, I think is a great way to spend, especially those early high school years. And as you move through, you will learn what really speaks to you. So you try 3 or 4 or 5 different things, and then all of a sudden what start as interests, you see these passions that start to emerge. And so, we always talk to students about the importance of depth of experience versus breadth of experience. Not that a broad set of experiences isn't important. Surely it is. And again, as you're exploring, it's good to try a few different things. But when it comes time for us in the application review process, what we're really looking for is a student who has been able to demonstrate some real depth in a couple of different areas. One of the biggest myths that I think is perpetrated largely by people like me is this idea that we're looking for well-rounded students. You've probably heard that before. Certainly if you have, if you've attended an information session in a college admission office, you've probably heard somebody say, yeah, we're looking for well-rounded students. I think that that's not exactly correct, actually. I think what we're looking for is a well-rounded class of students. Every year we're looking to enroll some number of students. This year our goal was about 2,300 first-year students and about 450 transfer students. And we're looking to create a class that is extremely well-rounded. But that doesn't mean that each individual person is well-rounded. We're actually looking for a well-rounded class of students made up of some angular people, some people who've done some interesting things with their time. And so if you decide as you go through high school, you know what, I played on the tennis team in 9th and 10th grade, but that's not really where my heart is. It's okay to drop tennis and go ahead and pick up something else that really does speak to your soul. And you're going to be able to, through the application, actually demonstrate why that's meaningful to you. There are spaces on the application form itself to talk about the activities. On some college applications, they will ask you to discuss 1 or 2 of the activities that have meaning for you and to talk about it in more depth than that sort of that one line of space on the application will provide. Some students will choose to use their personal statement, otherwise known as the college essay, to talk about an activity that was important to them, and all of that is okay. When it comes time to actually put together a resume, there's some helpful tips, I think, as it relates to the college application. One is use your space really effectively and efficiently. It's totally acceptable for a high school age person to have a 1 or 2 page resume. You don't need to have a 5-page resume to be impressive. When we're looking at applications, I think it's natural for anybody, not just college admission officers, but even an employer, to sort of naturally gravitate toward the first page, maybe the top of the second page. When we get to page 7, 8, 9, we lose it a little bit. So so if you can keep it to a couple of pages focused, I think that's a really good rule of thumb. And as I always say, if I, who have many more years of professional experience than you've been alive, can limit my professional resume to 2 to 3 pages, then certainly as a high school student, you can do the same thing. Be strategic in the things that you include on your resume. So the example I always like to give is if you have played the oboe since the 2nd grade, definitely put that on your application. Put it on your resume. It demonstrates commitment to an activity, work ethic, musical talent. So if you've played the oboe since the 2nd grade, definitely include it. If you played the oboe in the 2nd grade and didn't pick it up after that, probably not something that you need to put on your college application. So focus on the things that have been meaningful for you over the course of your high school career. Similarly, you're going to want to apply the same rules of English that you've been picking up through your English courses in high school or college. If you're a transfer student, you don't want to use poor grammar or punctuation or anything like that. Every piece of writing that you submit to us, whether in a formal essay or in a resume form, is an illustration of your professionalism. And so you want to make sure that you're putting together a really professional looking resume. Explain unique terms. Explain unique terms. So you probably have some activities available to you at your school that you know, in your community is sort of well known, but outside of your community might not be well known. So I'll give you an example. The closest high school to TCU is Pascal High School. It's right down the street from us. They have a club at the school called FCCLA. FCCLA. If I wrote FCCLA on the application and submitted it to a college, maybe TCU, because we're down the street, would know what that means. But a school on the other side of the state or the country would not know what that means. You would want to write out Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. Okay? And you might have in the description, promotes personal growth and leadership development through family and consumer science education. That's a really succinct description of the activity. So something that is unique to your community, you definitely want to explain. On the other hand, if you've got something like basketball, probably not necessary to say, I shot an orange spherical object into a hoop 10 feet off the ground. Pretty much everyone knows what basketball means. So if you've got terms that everyone understands, don't need that description. If you've got a term that is unique to your institution or your community, then you definitely want to explain what that is. Okay, I've already spoken for too long, Mike. I'm sure some of what I'm sharing will apply, but there's a lot of other stuff, a lot of other ways that you can advise a student in building a resume once they're in college. That's probably quite a bit different. So first of all, welcome and take it away.
Oh, thanks for having me, Heath. And yes, a lot of the topics and a lot of the pointers that you gave certainly would apply to employers as well, because just as you were talking about building a well-rounded class, the employers that we talk to in the Center for Career and Professional Development, they're looking for those unique individuals as well. And I would just echo a lot of your statements regarding being specific, giving those points and those particular experiences, skills, all those things that you've done that you really enjoy talking about. Because just like you all in admissions look at a resume and look at an application and talk to a student, and you see them light up when they're talking about those things that they're really passionate about, we hear the same things from employers in terms of talking to prospective interns, in terms of talking to our TCU grads who are leaving about their leadership experiences they've had on campus. They know when they hear from them about those experiences that were really meaningful, that were really valuable, that they can really articulate the value of what that experience meant to them. That's where really they can stand apart from those other applicants, because as with everything, you're looking at a lot of different resumes, and I'm sure in the admissions side, your team and everyone else in admissions is looking at all of these different people, and you're looking at what's the story behind this person. And that's what we will often tell students: take that quick glance at your resume, have someone else look at it and ask, in a 30-second glance, what story am I trying to tell here? What really stands out? What do I need to really emphasize? And you want to make sure that you're emphasizing the things that you are passionate about, and that are meaningful to you, and that will help you stand out as an individual applicant, whether that be to TCU or for your internship once you get on campus and you're applying to employers who are going to be looking for those same characteristics as well.
Mike, are you finding that students are trying to tell their story on their resume in a different way than they did maybe even 10 years ago? I'm seeing it even on applications to college, where it's not merely just I'm listing my activities, but there's almost like an introductory paragraph or a section that has like important skills. Or what are you seeing any changes recently?
I think so. And you know, in all of the years of looking at resumes, I think there's always been this sort of change and transition. And a lot of people have predicted that resumes will go away. I don't think resumes are going away, but as with most things, they are changing. And as you said, a lot of times students are giving a little bit more explanation, a little bit more detail, because that's important, because you have to give more specific detail beyond just putting something on paper and it's just a bullet, because there's so much more that goes beyond that. In some ways, resumes, that's the limitation of a resume. You're putting this experience that maybe you had for multiple years, all of this time, and how do you really boil it down? That's one of the hardest things, I think, for students to do. And so I think in some cases, I think students are trying to make sure they're expanding that. So it's a matter of balancing those things between limiting it to the 1 or 2 pages so you can tell your story in an efficient way, but also articulating the value of those experiences so you can also tell your story in an effective way so that the reader on the other side understands that. And that's the most important thing. When you're writing for classes, once you arrive at TCU as well, you're going to write for your audience, and you're in your resume, you're going to write for your audience. And when you're writing your admissions resume, when you're writing your college resume, write to your audience and think about that person on the other side. What are they looking for? Understand them, understand TCU, understand the campus, understand that person on the other side who's going to be reading it. What information do they want to know? If you start from that point, that will really help frame your resume and your outline as you prepare it.
I think that's terrific advice, and I would say a similar thing for the application resume. You know, if there is a way to sort of create that thread between perhaps your academic interests and your co-curricular interests, that's a really nice illustration of who you are, and it is really all about telling your story. Heather asks, is there a preferred TCU resume template, or can we use a generic resume format? And I would say for the application for admission, there is no template. Whatever format the student is using is going to be fine. A lot of high schools, as the students are going through the application process, the counselors at the school will provide students with a resume template, and it's fine to use that. You know, I've seen it in 100 different ways. And really, as long as you're able to effectively communicate your story, I think it's all right. Now, it may be a little bit different, Mike. I'm wondering from your perspective, as you're guiding students and your team is working with current TCU students, is there sort of a standard template you start with, or does it really depend on their field and the job they're applying for, and et cetera?
I think it really depends. And, you know, there is no one size fits all. There are sometimes, I think you see a lot of different conflicting advice related to resumes. And in some cases, starting from a template may be a useful starting point, but really there is no one size fits all. And you want to make sure that your resume is tailored and specific to what you're applying to. You also want your resume to be dynamic. So your resume that you're using to apply through the admissions process, by the time you arrive at TCU and you're applying to internships, you're going to change up some things, because those high school experiences or maybe middle school experiences or things that maybe had translated during all of that time, those things may change and evolve when you're using that resume later. So I would say there's no one size fits all with us. We like to really, like everything at TCU, we like to sit down individually with the student, talk about what specific job are you looking at? What are you applying to? Because our students in nursing, for example, they're going to be preparing applications that are going to be different than a student in accounting or a student in finance or a student in any of the variety of majors that are here on campus. So we like to take, again, that not the one size fits all, but take the individualized approach and talk with students about really what they're looking for. And I would encourage students, prospective students as well, to talk to their counselors, their advisors, mentors, parents, talk about really what that story is they're trying to tell, and then also get that feedback and get that advice on their resume so that they can make sure they're preparing a really good document that tells that story specific for what they are applying for. So definitely use all of the resources that you have at your advantage when you're doing that.
Wonderful. So we asked folks via social media to submit questions in advance if they wanted to, and Emily on Instagram asked which activities are best to leave off of your college resume. And so, Emily, I think that's a really interesting question, especially when you consider the advice that both Mike and I have talked about in terms of using your space efficiently. I would leave off the activities that you just sort of tried let's say your first semester of your 9th grade year. The things that don't have that through line. If it's something that you've done over an extended period of time, then it probably is something that has some meaning for you. If it's something that you did just once, that's not something that we're going to focus in on, because what we tend to do as we're reviewing applications is try to understand, to the extent possible, who you are as a person and all of your 360 degrees. And so the things that you've done day in and day out over the course of high school or over the course of your first year or two at a college prior to applying to transfer to TCU, those are things that really help shape your worldview. If you had one community service project that you did for 1 hour over, winter break, your 9th grade year, that's probably not something that we're going to pay much attention to in the process. So I would say, as you're thinking about how to use your space, focus on the things that, as Mike well put, that help tell your story. Mike, we got another question. This is from Hina Abichandani, and Hina asks, how do I work on the awards part of the application relating to my interests? So I'm going to answer that from the perspective of applying for college, and I'm wondering if there even is something like that on a professional resume. So for us, I like to see awards that were that sort of go beyond the I did the 10 hours needed to get the award that like 80% of the school gets, right? It's a thing that really helps establish how you distinguished yourself amongst a crowded peer group. So, I was the defensive player of the year on my football team, or I won the award for most outstanding citizen in the National Honor Society, things like that. Those are great. And if you have enough of them, you could have even an entire awards section, because then it's like, okay, here's somebody who's a standout. If it's like you have one award, you probably wouldn't have its own section on a resume. That may just be a bullet point under the particular activity. There's on the application itself, on a college application, typically there is a section for honors and awards. So if you choose not to submit a separate resume, but just use the application form itself to put all of your activities, which is totally acceptable, there usually is a spot for that. Mike, how might that differ for somebody who's putting together a professional resume?
Certainly, there's some similarities. So if you do have the specific awards, but I would say taking the long view, this is really where you start to think about writing your accomplishment statements and your descriptions of your experiences. Because in the career side, when you're applying to internships or applying to full-time jobs, or even applying to part-time on-campus experiences, if you can talk about your experiences beyond just the expectations in terms of what your job description was, but to talk specifically about what your accomplishments were in that role, those things stand out more than just the description. So when you're talking about maybe an experience, maybe you had a part-time job in high school, and then you're applying later to internships, talk about things that you accomplished in that part-time role, not just the job duties that were assigned to everyone, that everyone in that particular role would have, but what did you specifically accomplish? Were you named the Employee of the Month? Were you recognized by being promoted in your position? Were you promoted to a team leader position? Were you promoted, or were you given additional responsibilities? So I think in terms of awards, you want to think in terms of accomplishment statements as well for your long view with relation to internships and jobs. Because with standing out in a sea of applicants later on when you're applying to internships, You want to make sure that you're emphasizing those things that you did above and beyond, and the things that really can help you stand out and it can help that reader on the other side understand how you thought about that experience, because they want you to think about that experience as having meaning and having depth. And they want to know that you were thinking about it beyond just the duties or the tasks that were assigned, but really how did it benefit you in the long run? It may have been a job that you may feel like you're underselling a little bit, but it really, probably there are some accomplishments that you have that you should include, and go back and reflect on those things. We always recommend in the Career Center that you think about quantifying those accomplishment statements as well. So if you have numbers, if you have details, if you can quantify or qualify the experiences you have, that's really going to make you stand out beyond someone who just writes the description.
Emilio Duran asked via Instagram, what does a good transfer resume look like? And I think this goes back to the point of creating that thread, because typically when a student is transferring to TCU, what we see amongst those applicants is a more refined understanding of what their academic and professional purpose is going to be. It's very common for high school students to come into college undecided, or what we at TCU call pre-major. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're, again, not expected to know at 17 years old what you want to do with the rest of your life. Typically with transfer students, because they have a couple of years of college experience under their belt, they've taken some of the introductory level courses, they've crossed off the list of things that they initially were interested in. Now they've developed some new academic passions, which have also led them to think about their professional goals. And maybe they've even had an internship or two. So to the extent that a transfer student can marry those ideas, focus on the co-curricular experiences that they have had that pair really nicely with their intended major, I think that really looks good for us on the transfer application. The other thing I would mention, though, with transfer students is typically the admission decision is going to be weighted most heavily on academic performance in college. It's a little bit less holistic than the way we review applications for high school seniors. For high school seniors, we want to not just look at grades, test scores if the student chooses to submit a test score. As you all might know, TCU is currently a test optional school. Co-curricular activities, letters of recommendation, and all of these sort of fit together in a different way for each candidate. With transfer students, it's usually much more straightforward. If you've got the GPA that we're looking for in that particular field, then we're going to have space for you. So again, it's a bit of an apples to oranges comparison. Hey, Mike, we were talking earlier off camera about the intern scholarship program at TCU, which I just think is one of the true gems of the university. It's a real crown jewel. Can you talk about that? Give a brief description of the intern scholarship program?
Absolutely, yes. So we're fortunate to have just over $200,000 that we allot, along with some additional funds that we allot to students who have unpaid experiences, and we award those in the spring, fall, and the summer. The Intern Scholars Program allows us to provide assistance to students who maybe need help with transportation costs or other costs associated with their experience. So maybe a student has found an internship with a nonprofit organization or a government organization that is unpaid. And we don't want there to be any barriers for students in terms of considering whether they want to gain that experience. So we don't want the pay nature of that experience to get in the way of the student gaining valuable experiences for their career goals. We also award some funds to students who have low paying internships as well. So if they maybe have an internship that has a small stipend or award associated with it, students may still be eligible to apply for those funds. Last summer, I was just looking through as we were talking offline, last summer we awarded funds to just over 140 students who did just a lot of tremendously interesting experiences. And we modified our program and made it optional for students to do remote experiences as well. So some students had needs related to technology and access for their experiences over the summer. So we provided assistance there. It's a great way for students, again, to take on internships that they want to do, not necessarily the internship that they have to do. Some students maybe start from that point of thinking, okay, I've got to find just a paid job or a part-time job during a summer or during a fall. or spring semester, we want to make sure that students have all the resources that we can possibly provide to make sure they have the chance to find things that are also related to their major or their career path and their interests. And at TCU, 4 out of 5 of our students leave with an internship before they graduate, which we're very appreciative of as well, because that is one of the most important factors in terms of preparing your application for jobs post-grad.
Mike, are there, just along those same lines, because that's a great statistic, are there certain majors that require internships in order to graduate?
There are a few, yes, and they vary by the different colleges across campus. So when you're looking at attending TCU, I would encourage you to look at the different college requirements and look whether that is either a requirement or an option, depending on your major. And that's one of the valuable pieces of this as well, because if you have that as a requirement within your major, for example, we have some majors that maybe find internships sometimes, political science, for example. Maybe those experiences may lend themselves more to an experience in government or working with a nonprofit. But again, the intern scholarship funds provide access to those students to secure those internships if they maybe are doing that internship as a part of their requirement versus taking on a paid job. We also here in the Career Center post positions related to on-campus employment as well. So if students would like to work on campus, we encourage students to think about that as an option as well, which is a great resource for students.
Yeah, again, we love to talk up the intern scholarship program. I always use the example, for students that they're not forced to choose between, having some spending money or pursuing a professional interest. They get to do both at the same time, which is such a treat, and in certain majors, really difficult to do. I know that when I was in college, and I was about 1.5 billion years ago, and I was a political science major, it was really hard for a poli-sci major to get a paid internship. And so for a lot of those students, you're feeling like, well, I gotta work at the movie theater, so I have gas money for the upcoming semester. And so the intern scholarship program, say that 5 times fast, doesn't make you do that. Doesn't put you in that bind. And I know that we're not the only school that has a program like it, but it's not terribly commonplace. So I do think it helps us stand out with some of our peer and aspirant institutions.
Absolutely, 100%. We've got a lot of great employer partners and a lot of relationships that we built with our academic partners across campus as well, so that students have access to that through their faculty and other resources. So if students need additional information about finding experiences, I think that's what's great about TCU is everyone on campus is so career-minded and so student-focused on making sure that students have access to experiences. So we will often get calls from faculty or others to say, hey, I've got a student, they're looking for this experience, can you help them out? And that's what I really love about being here. And I really love about our program because, again, we look at things individually and work with those individual students to make those things possible.
Raul Villanueva asks, is there anything you recommend I do in order to boost my resume and make me stand out? Raul, this is a great question. What I always tell students as they're sort of in that late in their high school careers, but they still have some time to do some things, is write down everything that you've done so far. If you were to create a resume, just make a list of, before you format it, just make a list of everything you've done. Circle the things that you enjoy doing and put a line through the things that mom or dad or your Aunt Bess told you looks good for college, and stop doing those things. Focus on the things that really matter to you, and that will ultimately make you stand out, because that's where the thread comes in, right? So I'm wondering if you were to answer that question, Mike, from your perspective, how to boost a resume and make me stand out? What is some advice? What's some general advice that you have for a student, whether they're at this stage, looking at college, or maybe more to your shop when they're in college and they're looking to get that internship or apply for a job? Are there some just basic tips that you can give to help someone boost their resume?
Yeah, I would say very broadly, fast forwarding to maybe that first internship or job experience in terms of adding some weight to your resume or adding some experiences or some skills. We encourage students to first think about, again, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And think about what experiences then are leading you to that point. So in some cases, if it is a particular position, what we might do is sit down with the student and look at a job description or an internship description for that role and look at the requirements, look at the description and see what are the experiences and what are the skills that are needed there. And in terms of really boosting the resume, it's looking at and seeing, is it a match? And do you have those particular skills? If not, then let's look at opportunities and ways that you can gain those particular skills, whether that be involvement through a student organization on campus, finding an on-campus job, finding an additional internship, finding an experience through a part-time position, perhaps, but finding sort of that connection that you need to get to that experience that you want. In terms of really thinking about students who are incoming in terms of boosting their resume, again, I would go back to your advice and say, do the things that you're really interested in, because those are going to be the things that you're going to be able to articulate and will help you stand out as an individual versus someone who is trying to just apply broadly to everything. So think about those things very specific in terms of what you have done, what you've accomplished, and then emphasize those things. So add a little bit more description to those things. Go back to your bullets. Go back to the experiences that you've had. And then one very basic tip, again, with relation to that, go back and look at the descriptions of your experiences and think about whether those things could apply to you and only you, or if they could apply to any applicant or anyone who is in that role. So take a whole holistic overall look at your resume and think about what stands out and what is unique and specific about you. And take those things out that are not and emphasize those things that are, and continue to gain those experiences as well.
So that triggered a question in my head about how our Center for Career and Professional Development is structured, and the career specialists we have who really know the chosen field of the student. Can you describe that in a little more depth, and why is that important?
Sure, absolutely. So as simply as possible, we are both generalists and specialists. So if a student needs basic help with starting a resume, beginning at that first or second year, getting questions answered about the intern scholarship program or other things, we can help all students, all majors, all class years. But then we also have embedded career consultants in each of the colleges across campus who can give that specific advice. For example, if you're a nursing major, if you're a finance major, if you're a student in fine arts, if you're a student who has an interest in theater, if you're a student who has an interest in strategic communication, once you're narrowing things down to those specific goals and those specific roles in terms of employment, your questions are going to become a little more complex. They're going to become a little more nuanced. Then you're going to move to thinking about, how do I get a job with a marketing agency? Or how do I get a job with one of these 3 marketing agencies or one of these 5 particular organizations that I really want to work for? Then your questions are going to become more nuanced. So our career consultants have that specialized knowledge in the individual colleges that they can help you tailor your specific resume and tailor your specific application, your cover letter, all of those things, and also connect you to networking connections within those chosen fields as well. So I think that's one of the real value adds here at TCU with that embedded career consultant model and with our specialists that are there to help with those really specific detailed questions.
So Janice asks, says her daughter's heart has been set on TCU. Thank you very much. Go Frogs. She wants to own her own dance studio and teach. What pathway for a major minor would you suggest she choose? So first of all, Janice, thank you for being here. And I would think that your daughter's definitely going to want to pursue the BFA in dance. We have our School for Classical and Contemporary Dance offering programs in modern dance and ballet, and it's just a world-class program. And if your daughter's going to want to teach dance, she certainly should have that background on the fine arts side. I think it also would make sense for her to pick up a minor in business, and that's fairly easy to do, to pick up that minor. There are 21 hours required for the minor in business, and it's going to provide for her some basic understanding of how business works, so that she would be able to own her own business. So everything from management to marketing to accounting and financial planning and just some of those basics, so she can pair those. But Mike, what I'm wondering is, if a student comes to you or comes to one of the consultants and says, here's my career path, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to own my own dance studio. To what extent are you providing academic advice? Like, where's the line between what the specialists are doing and when you kick it back to the colleges for academic advising, or is there a little bit of marriage there?
Probably a little bit of marriage. We have a great relationship with our colleagues in academic advising. So with that embedded model that we have, our consultants also are in communication with the academic advisors. So if it gets down to a question related to major declaration, those specific things with class selection, those particular topics, we have great relationships with our academic advisors, because a lot of times those conversations overlap, kind of vice versa on their side as well. When they're talking about academic advising, sometimes they will cross-refer folks to us as well. So it's a little bit of both, and that's what's great about our model, because Melanie Colson, who would be our person who this student would work with, she has that knowledge in fine arts, who could then work with the students and then also connect the student with academic advising resources and resources specifically within the college. And I would also just add and echo your statement about business. I also might recommend, or Melanie might recommend, also talking to the Entrepreneurship Center as well. Mm-hmm. They are fantastic. We work with them all the time. They actually do a lot of our intern funding options as well. So they're a great resource. So if you're interested in starting a business or thinking about entrepreneurship, so if you're interested in dance and then you're also interested in creating a business out of that, they're fantastic to work with in terms of helping students from all majors to get connected to the funding resources, or just what it means to start a business and get started with that question.
Excellent. Okay. Andira Cook asks, how do you view summer programs that students complete to explore a major they are interested in? I think the use of summertime to explore academic interests makes great sense. Sometimes we hear students who are interested in a particular college, and so they pursue an academic program during the summer at that college in the hopes that that's going to sort of curry favor with the admission folks on those campuses. Generally speaking, that's not a successful approach. So if you want to go to Stanford, for example, doing the summer program at Stanford doesn't really give you a leg up, because their admit rate's like 4%, right? So I think by and large, that's not the approach. You should just choose the program that appeals to you. So if you've got an interest in, let's say, international affairs, and you have the opportunity to do a summer program at a university in Washington, D.C., which is sort of a hub of international activity, by all means, you should take that opportunity. It's going to help you stand out. It's going to help tell that story of who you are. Mike, can you talk about the ways in which college students might effectively spend their summer times?
Absolutely. So first of all, internships are key. Many students complete more than one internship experience while they're here at TCU. So starting your summer experience with an internship or an experience, but certainly if you're interested in applying to a part-time job, gaining experience that way is certainly valuable as well. Internships, though, are probably the biggest piece where students gain experience during the summers, and we certainly encourage students to find ways to do that. I saw a note related to applying to internships in the Intern Scholarship Program as well, related to that particular question as well. Usually the application process for those funds is right before the beginning of that term. So for summer, we have the application process and deadline just before the summer semester. For fall, right before fall semester, and spring likewise. Our internship cycles, typically the application process is on the employer side or the organization where students are applying. Those applications typically start 1 to 6 months, depending on the field, depending on the employer, depending on the organization. Those start that process. With that process, so an internship or a student will secure an internship first and then apply to the funding option for that experience.
Mike, do you think there's a difference in terms of impact, both for the student themselves and the impact on a resume, between an internship that may have occurred during the academic year versus one that happened over the summer?
Sure, that's a great question. I don't think so in terms of employers. I think employers will look at both of those experiences as valuable. It's really the length of the experience and the quality and depth of the experience that's really going to stand out. So an experience during the summer that extends for those 2 to 2.5 months of that time is going to be just as valuable as a fall or spring internship. It's also going to vary depending on the field or the major that the student is in as well. So for some majors, some internships will predominantly be shifted toward the summer because that's the timing. For some fields like accounting, given the nature of accounting cycles, those internships and those experiences may be on a different timeline. So again, it's going to depend on the individual experience and the individual student.
Okay, David Smith asks a really important question, specific to high school student who's deeply involved in musical theater, and this could also apply to sports and I can imagine other activities as well. If all of a student's time is spent in auditions, rehearsals, plays, workshops, camps, both during school and in the summers, how concerned should he or she be about not having experiences in other clubs or having work experience? I love that question, David. It's one that we get quite a bit. And we are definitely well aware of the extreme time commitment that certain activities command. If you are involved in musical theater, that's going to take up a good chunk of your time. We get that. Similarly, if you're playing sports at a high level, let's say you're playing for your high school varsity volleyball team and you're also playing for the club team. I mean, that's pretty much every waking hour outside of school. So we understand that. And that's where I started the comments earlier talking about depth versus breadth. And it's absolutely okay for a student to have 1 or 2 things that they do at an extreme level versus having 10 or 12 different things that they're not totally passionate about. I'm always careful, though, because I don't want folks to think that the only way to get into college or to get into a good college is to have those 1 or 2 things that you do. There are plenty of students who, by the time they're a senior in high school, haven't found their life's passion. That's okay. But we do expect that you have some interests and that you have cultivated those interests in some way. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, David. That's absolutely fine. And especially if the student is planning to pursue musical theater in college, then there would almost be an expectation of the musical theater department that the student had done all of that activity. If they hadn't had those experiences, it probably wouldn't make for a successful audition experience. So depending on the academic program you're going into, it's almost better to have that sort of singular focus. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Let's take a few different questions. So we've handled most of the questions, I think, that relate to the resume and the pre-professional stuff. There's some other things in here that people want to know about. So I'm going to just shoot through the questions. Laura Singer asks, how will TCU look at this last COVID year in terms of grades and extracurricular activities being limited, especially in states like California? Thank you. First of all, thank you for your question, Laura. Thank you for being from California. That's my home state. So I love all of my friends from the Golden State. We are all very well aware of how the last year plus has unfolded. It's impacted all of us. It's impacted us in different ways, depending on what part of the country you're from. The way I answer this is in a way that I think can really resonate, because sometimes we say, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. And people are like, yeah, but what do you mean? I mean, how can I be so sure? The reason you can be sure is we need students at TCU. So it really wouldn't make sense for us to penalize students for any reason, certainly things that are beyond their control. So the way we account for that is we are reviewing students in the context of their school and in their communities. So if you attended a school where, let's say for the second semester of the 1920 academic year, your school system went to a pass-fail grading system instead of a traditional A through F scale, we're going to adjust just as you've had to adjust because we want students to attend TCU. And same thing with the co-curricular activities. You can only do what you could have done. if your tennis season was canceled, then we're not going to hold it against you that you didn't play tennis. You could even still put on your application, I played tennis 9th through 12th grade, 11th grade suspended for COVID. And we would understand that that was something that you were still committed to. You may have even played on your own during that time. And that's absolutely okay. I wonder, Mike, if employers, I'm sure that college students are asking that same question. Do employers know that we couldn't have done an internship last year? Have you gotten that question?
We have, yes. We've had some discussions with some of our employers and how they're handling that with the process. And we've heard from some employers that may be an interview question or a topic that students ask as well. I guess flipping it back on the employer side or the student to the employer side, a lot of our students are asking employers, how did you manage the workplace during COVID? And we also, in addition to helping students with resumes, we help them with that interview process as well. So a lot of students are thinking about going to work for an employer. They may ask that question. Likewise, for the employer, they may ask, how did you spend your last year? How did you manage this transition? Sometimes those things prompt whether in the question and answer process, or maybe prompted by the student themselves to say, here's a specific example of how I managed this last year. And so we've had a lot of conversations with students in terms of presenting their experiences that they've had in managing online classes, online coursework, and particularly for this incoming class of students, seniors who are graduating this year, they have managed a tremendous amount of change. And so I think that's going to provide some interesting discussion items and topics for students to be able to really shine in terms of how they approached this last year and how they managed that. Maybe they did things virtually, maybe they gained skills, maybe they took an online class. Definitely don't undersell those things, because those things are just as valuable. We all sort of had to figure out how to manage those things during this past year.
Yeah, interviewing is sort of an interesting topic. We have a funny graphic that I use sometimes about that, a Dilbert cartoon, which, we talk so much about putting together a great resume, and then sometimes you get to the point where hey, my resume looks so good, I got an interview, and then you're not really sure what exactly to say in the interview, and there are some things that you'd want to say and things that you don't want to say, right, Mike? So I'm glad to know. I think it's great that we provide that interview training as well. Really, our Center for Career and Professional Development, I'm not just saying this because you're here, I think is fantastic. I mean, it's a full service operation, and students have access to it. How long do students have access to the Center for Career and Professional Development?
For life. So unlike a lot of schools who maybe limit access to just your time that you're on campus or the first 6 months or first 3 months after graduation, anytime students can come back, alumni can come back. So once you've found your first job, I always like to say that hardly any of our alumni, if you talk to an alum who is 5-10 years out, hardly any of them are doing the first job they had right after they graduated. So those transitions are going to happen after graduation, and we're there to assist with those transitions as well.
I think that we talk about that a lot in our office. I think that is a perk that if you are 16 or 17 years old, you might not quite grasp how impressive that is, how important that is. I think the parents almost always get it right away. It means if in 20 or 30 years you decide you want to have a career change, you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a career coach. You, as I like to say, paid into the system. So I think it's a really wonderful service that we provide.
Absolutely. We even have community members who sometimes reach out to us and ask if they can utilize the services because they've heard from alumni of the resources that are here on campus. So it's definitely a great resource for alumni, because we also have those connections with alumni as well, who are then on the hiring side. They're managers. So 5 to 10 years out, when we're talking to students here in the Career Center, we know that the students that we're talking with now, they are going to be the students who are going to be hiring this group of students who are now applying for admissions. And to have that access to the network is really, really important, because that's one more piece of the big puzzle of resumes, applications, cover letters, interviews, and then also having that connection to resources and people that you can reach out to and get advice from and find out how they did it, how they managed it. And those are the people who can really have valuable information and insights to share related to those specific industries or companies or organizations.
Terrific. Okay, Ella Hicks asks, When will the prompt for the application essays be released? Thank you. Hi, Ella. Good to see you again. Ella's from here in North Texas. We do not have any intention of changing our application prompts this year, our essay prompts. And if the students, well, let me take a step back. When students apply to TCU, they have the opportunity to use either the TCU application, the common application, which is a generic application that's accepted by over 900 colleges, or Apply Texas, and that is our state's own sort of common application. I mean, it's not related to Common App in any way, but all of the public schools and almost all of the private schools in Texas use Apply Texas. We also use, there's this fourth application, I think I said fourth, the Coalition for College. 4 applications. All of those application questions, it doesn't matter which application you use, it doesn't matter which of the essay topics you choose on those applications. Our essay, the one that we control, those essay prompts are not going to change this year. We're toying with whether we're going to change the short answer questions, and if that happens, you'll see that when we release the application on August 1st. But the sort of primary 500-word length essay, those you should be able to find already. You can start working on those as soon as you'd like. Okay, just a few minutes left, so we'll pick up some of these last questions. Barry O'Brien Fryer asks, regarding letters of recommendation, if you were a virtual student this past year, would you ask your sophomore year teachers for a recommendation since they knew you personally, or would you still recommend asking your virtual junior year teachers for a recommendation? That is a great question, Barry, and I think it's going to depend on the relationship that you were able to build with the teacher in this last year. I know of some students, I can speak for my own children, for example, who got to know their teachers really well in the virtual environment. Now, my kids aren't quite old enough to require a letter of recommendation yet, but if they were, I would feel very comfortable for them to ask their teachers. There are other students where that just was not possible for a variety of reasons. And so in those cases, I think it's to get a sophomore year teacher if you feel like that teacher really knows you well. If it would be even better if the teacher you ask from sophomore year was somebody who's teaching you again in senior year. And the reason why I say that is because by the time you apply to college, or rather by the time you enter college, you're now 3 years removed from your sophomore year of high school. And there's a lot of maturation that occurs during that 3-year period. We're trying to assess the kind of student you're going to be in the classroom in college. Sometimes we can imagine that relationship between 10th grade and first year of college, but sometimes there's a lot of change that happens during that time. But to answer the question, if 10th grade is going to provide you with the teacher who really knows the student very well and can speak to the character and work ethic of the student in a way that will translate to us as we're reviewing the application, I think it's absolutely acceptable for a student to get a letter from that teacher. Marcus Rafe asks, should the essay feel like a timeline of your life, and what makes those events make you stand out, or almost like a biography? Marcus, it's a great question, and we're going to talk a lot next month in our Facebook Live session about the essay. I think generally speaking, you do not want your essay to simply be rehashing what's on your essay. It shouldn't just be a timeline. First I did this, then I did this, then I did that. That's information that we can glean elsewhere on the application, either on the resume or a transcript or what have you. Rather, I think you want to focus on an experience or a story, a vignette that tells us something about who you are and what speaks to you in your soul. So typically, a timeline is a less effective format to get your points across. Okay, so we're just about out of time. We've got a minute or two left. Mike, do you have any sort of closing thoughts you want to leave folks with this evening?
Just thanks for your time, Heath, and we are available to help once your students arrive on campus. We appreciate the opportunity to work with your students and prepare them for life after TCU. You're thinking about life arriving on campus first, but we also want to engage with students early and often as well. So encourage your students to meet with us when they arrive. We're here to help. Our career consultants are available and ready to help with all the questions that they have and beyond related to their career path. And that's our job, that's our role, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with them. And we hope that we get the chance to do that with your students.
Thank you. And I would echo those comments. Likewise, our staff in the Office of Admission is here to help you at any point along the way. You can reach us by calling 817-257-7490. You can reach us via email at frogmail@tcu.edu. You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, and we would just love to connect with you at a time that's convenient with you. If you've got questions about this process, further questions about how to document what you've done in high school, how to select that right co-curricular experience as you're heading into your junior year, your senior year, or what have you, you can always contact us, and we're here to help guide you through that process. We will see you again next month on July, I think it's the 7th, whatever the first Wednesday in July is, and you'll get a reminder about it, and we'll be talking more about the college essay. But until then, thank you, Mike, for joining me, and thanks everyone for being here. Have a great evening, and go Frogs.